Hey everyone. In this video I'll go over all tank related changes that are coming with the Gold Road chapter, also called Update 42, that we could see in the patch notes. I'm not going to go over scribing yet because nothing new was said about it in the patch notes, and PTS itself was down for a while, because of a bug where PTS template characters were appearing on live NA server, but I will cover scribing in more detail later on. Starting off with sets, first we have the Ayleid Refuge, which is the heavy set from Overland in Westfield. This set gives you an 11% damage reduction for 3 seconds after blocking an attack. Tanks usually don't use defensive item sets, but I feel like that's partly because there are no good defensive item sets. And this set looks at least a little bit promising. Of course, we don't need any more damage mitigation against blockable attacks. We already have plenty of tools for dealing with that. But blocking an attack is just the proc condition. It will still mitigate damage from, for example, dots, after you've procced it with blocking. So it could still be useful in some fights, but it's gonna be completely overshadowed by the next set I'm going to show you. Lucent Echoes is the heavy set from the new trial, Lucent Citadel. When you're above 50% HP, it increases the critical damage and critical healing of your allies by 11%. And while you're below 50% HP, it grants you a massive 20% damage mitigation buff instead. This set will most likely replace Elemental Catalyst in trial compositions. The crit damage bonus is slightly lower, as Elemental Catalyst can provide up to 15%, but this can be entirely played around. And even now, some groups are using Elemental Catalyst with only 2 elements, because they don't need more crit damage. The crit damage cap is 125%, and you're starting off with 50%. You get 20% from Major Force, 10% from Minor Force, 10% from Minor Brittle, and that already puts you at 90%. If we add Lucent Echoes, we're at 101%, and the damage dealer only has to get 24% on their own. Arcanists have it the easiest. They get 12% from the Fated Fortune passive, so with 6 medium pieces, they will be exactly at the 125% cap. Wardens can reach the same values with 3 Animal Companions abilities. Templars and Nightblades get 10% crit damage from their class passives, so they can reach the cap with 7 medium. Classes without innate crit damage will have to get a bit more from another source, such as Fighting Finesse, Harpooner's Wading Kilt, the Khajiit Racial, or some situational stuff like Sulzan, but that was already the case with Elemental Catalyst. So, because Lucent Echoes is so much more reliable than Elemental Catalyst, it also affects crit healing and also grants the tank a massive survivability boost, I think it's going to entirely replace it in team compositions. I recorded most of it when PTS was still down, so I was only going off of the patch notes on the forum, where Lucent Echoes is shown to grant 11% critical damage. But right now on the PTS, this set grants 15% critical damage, and I don't know which value is the bugged one. But either way, everything I said about replacing Elemental Catalyst still applies. Xoryn's masterpiece is the light healer set from the new trial. I don't think it's going to be used on tanks, but I decided to mention it anyway, since fitting support sets in the team composition is a group effort. So maybe in some situations it would actually land on a tank. This set grants 1667 max stamina and magicka to all allies within 28 meters, which is equivalent to 158 weapon and spell damage. So it is a straight up weaker per lesson word. But I don't want to theorize on where this will fit in the group composition, since it's very hard to do without actually going into the trial and testing stuff. And I didn't get a chance to do it yet because of the PTS issues. Next we have Mythic Gloves, Rourken Steamguards. Now, they seem completely useless, but I want to talk about them because I think it's an extremely cool concept with horrible implementation. In a big shortcut, these gloves introduce a parry mechanic to blocking. It rewards you for only raising block right before an attack is about to hit you, which I think is great, and to be honest I wish that was an innate mechanic within ESO's combat, rather than limited to a mythic item. Now the issue is that this mythic only rewards you with more damage mitigation. You gain 99% damage mitigation for a super short amount of time, and at that point, why not just dodge roll the attack entirely? I feel like performing a successful quote-unquote parry with this mythic should reward you with something else, like restoring your resources, giving you some buff for a longer duration, or debuffing the enemy. Because right now, it's just a worse dodge roll. Not to mention that it has a 10-second cooldown, so you'd have to not block anything for 10 seconds to have it ready for the big hit. Necromancer's Restoring Tether ability is now going to heal for 14% more, which is supposed to bring it closer to similar healing abilities, according to Zos's spreadsheets. Sorcerer's Blood Magic gets a decent buff. This passive used to restore 10% of your max HP whenever you dealt damage with a dark magic ability. From a tank's perspective, this meant you'd only proc with a crystal weapon. You'd cast it, and then your next 2 light attacks would heal you for 10% of max HP. Now this is going to trigger whenever you cast a non-free dark magic ability, which is going to be so much better for us. It's a slight nerf for Crystal Weapon, as you only proc it once per cast, rather than twice, but now you also heal for 10% whenever you cast Vibrant Shroud, Dark Deal, and Ayleid Refuge. So it's going to add up, especially since Dark Deal and Vibrant Shroud already heal you on their own. Templar's Blazing Spear is now going to immobilize enemies for 4 seconds. I don't think it's gonna make it worth using. Personally, the combined slow of Elemental Blockade, Pulsar and Caltrops is enough for me to control trash packs, but I know some people prefer straight up immobilizations, so it's a nice change. So it's a bit weird that it's the damage morph receiving this buff, not the support morph that Templar tanks would be more likely to use. What's really funny though is the dev comment attached to it. Templar tanks have slowly been creeping into the scene. Source?
My source is that I made it the fuck up.
If you check the statistics for the latest trial, Sanity's Edge in hard mode, we'll find that in the current patch there have been 708 clears with DK tanks, 672 with Arcanists, 530 with Necromancers, 214 with Sorcerers, only 14 with Templars, and then 2 with Wardens and 0 with Nightblades. So no, Templars are not creeping into the scene, and they do need more proper buffs. And if you look at more difficult trials, like Dreadsail Reef, there are just no Templar tanks that cleared it in hard mode this patch. Werewolf tanks get actually good changes. The Deafening Roar ability will now passively grant you major protection, instead of major prophecy and major savagery, reducing your damage taken by 10%. It will also allow you to taunt enemies with your heavy attacks while slotted, removing the need to run the Tormentor set in order to tank as a werewolf. Taunting with a heavy attack is quite interesting. It does work with medium attacks, so it won't take that long, though it's still gonna drop your block. But either way, it's not going to be much worse than taunting with a pounce, because both of these things will drop your block. And I feel like it's okay to demand some more situational awareness, as a trade-off for the rest of Werewolf's kit being so simple and easy. You simply have more attention to spare, because you don't have to keep track of as many abilities, and you only have a single ability bar. The Werewolf heavy attack does look long and clunky, but it's just the animation. If you're using any global cooldown add-on, you'll notice that it does actually have a 1 second cast time, just like all other heavy attacks. It's just that the animation doesn't match it. The second change is that buffs applied by the Howl of Despair synergy, Feeding Frenzy, will now last 20 seconds, rather than 10. So you can provide better uptime on Minor Force and Empower for your allies. So I feel like this ability should be granting more than a single synergy use per cast, to be actually a reliable source of these. Werewolf also gets an indirect buff. The Rush of Agony set gets a small 800 millisecond delay before it attempts to pull targets, but its range has been increased from 10 to 12 meters. So now it's on par with Vateshran's Sword and Board's pool. And lastly, we have a small change for Propelling Shield. It will now only affect abilities with a base range of at least 28 meters, rather than 20. But I don't think it's going to affect tanking at all. I've only used it in the Ansul fight, and only to propel Destructive Clench and Crushing Shock, which both have a base range of 28 meters anyway, and won't be affected by this nerf. And that's it for this video. If you have any more questions, you can comment down below, or join our Discord server Wildheart. As always, feedback will be appreciated. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe to my channel and check out my Twitch. Thanks for watching and see you next time.